Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody. The podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really excited about this episode. We have a really special guest on. So her name is Rhiannon Bolen, and she is the board chair of DIFFA Dallas. And DIFFA is one of those events, if I were to sum it up in a sentence, I would say it is Texas's answer to the Met Gala. It really is one of the most fun, unique, elaborate, beautiful events that I have ever gone to and everything that goes into it. But the thing about DIFFA that is just so great is it benefits so many wonderful causes, specifically with those who are servicing HIV and AIDS causes and individuals in northern Texas. So Rhiannon's going to have a great broad wealth of knowledge about the organization, what it takes to have a really good, strong board. And I know this is going to be a really fun conversation. So with that, Rhiannon, welcome. And I am just so excited to have you here today as a guest.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So share what the mission of DIFFA is for our listeners.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. So DIFFA started in 1984, back around when the AIDS crisis was here and in full effect. And we created this organization with a mission to provide critical financial support to North Texas AIDS services organizations, or we call them ASOs. And we do that through a grant process. The ASOs that we work with, they provide direct care to adults and families and children living with or impacted by HIV and AIDS. And the proceeds from the funds that we raise from our events go to support the funding of those grants. So all the donations that are contributed go directly to providing education, direct care, prevention, and advocacy for those that are affected by HIV and AIDS. DIFFA is one of the largest and most successful fundraising organizations for HIV and AIDS for nonprofit service providers and education programs. And we are the only HIV and AIDS organization in Texas that provides non-earmarked funding exclusively to HIV and AIDS services efforts in our communities. And that's really important because the funds can really go to anything that the ASOs need it for. DIFFA Dallas is the largest chapter by funds raised of all the chapters of DIFFA across the country. And you can go onto our website and see what we're all about at diffadallas.org. And you can also help to donate to support the mission. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
I'm really glad, you first of all, you gave great call to actions, where people can go and support and do that, please, because this is definitely an organization worth supporting. I'm glad that, one of the reasons that I'm doing this is, back in the 80s and 90s, AIDS was a topic everyone talked about. And it's really important to understand that the needs are just as big and just as important now. It's just we're perhaps serving as opposed to, quality of life towards the end. It's much more about, providing people with the tools and the access so that they can live with HIV and AIDS. And that's been I think that's been the biggest evolution with HIV and AIDS as a medical condition over the last few decades.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so, I'm always fascinated with, how people get involved with organizations. So talk about how you initially got involved with DIFFA Dallas.
Yeah. So ironically, I've actually been attending or in and around DIFFA, and mainly what we now call House of DIFFA, since the late 90s. My husband and I used to, not today, but we used to work in the fashion industry. And even back then, the event at that time, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about, the event and how it's evolved, but it was even back then kind of the pinnacle of the fashion events for the year. And so early on, in the late 90s, my husband and I used to attend. I even have, a picture of us at a DIFFA event where I was pregnant with my first son, who's now 24. And then we kind of over the years, we kind of got away from attending some of the events just because we had young children and we weren't as involved. And then in 2022, Jeff, my husband, and we became the first couple to represent the Style Council. So they'd never had a couple on the Style Council before. And so we did that in 2022. And then after that, I was nominated to the board of directors. And I'm now in my third year of being on the board. And as we know, the current DIFFA Dallas board chair. So it's been kind of a long road. That's brought me from my beginning with DIFFA all the way through to now, which has been, call it 24, 25 years being actively involved and getting to participate in the events, getting to give back. And so it's been kind of a long time for me.
That's incredible. And it is rare for to see someone be involved with an organization, sometimes more actively than others because you can't be on the front burner 24 hours a day for 25 years. That burn anybody out. But that
Mm.
you've supported it for so long. What about this organization in particular just has made you say, "Yes, I want to support this cause," and I've done so for, a substantial part of your life?
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier about sort of the evolution since the HIV/AIDS crisis in the 1980s, and of course, back then it was such an epidemic, and there was so many people that needed treatment and couldn't get it, and you evolve that to today, where there's been a lot of there's been treatments that have been out there for a long time, and you would think that it's a lesser impact because of that. However, for me, it's actually been shocking to become more educated and really learn about how underserved communities are impacted by the lack of funds and care for HIV and AIDS. When you think about, people without insurance, people that aren't educated about protecting themselves, people that are living with food insecurity or facing homelessness that can't have access to care. I mean, when you have, no home potentially, you have very little food, you can't get care, you've been cut off from insurance, or et cetera. There's just no or very limited resources to help with these communities, and this is how DIFFA helps, and that gives me that just I'm very passionate about that. We provide funds to the AIDS Services Organization or the ASOs that give to these underserved individuals, and I'm incredibly humbled to have the opportunity to serve alongside an incredible board of individuals for us to be able to give back in this way.
That's fantastic. And you can really hear your passion come through with that. And and I think there's kind of a misperception. It's like, okay, there's drugs to keep people alive. There's PrEP now. There's
Mm-hmm.
all these different things. And people think, okay, well, that's done and it's off the checkbox. But the thing is that you have to have the access and the resources to gain that stuff. Otherwise, these organizations that you all give to are so critically important. And I want to talk a little bit about that because you were talking about, the non-earmarked funds so that the funds that you give can kind of serve whatever that organization needs. But
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about how DIFFA as an organization, selects and gives grants to HIV and AIDS nonprofits in North Texas.
Yeah, right. So we talked a little bit about it. Our grant philosophy is really to close that gap that's left by insufficient and declining government funding. There's some statistics out there. We work from a report that it was because we're specifically in Dallas, that comes from the Dallas County Health and Human Services, and just as recent as 2017, it was estimated that over 18,000 people were living with HIV in Dallas County alone. So we know that there's a need, right? And what we do is, we have this, and we'll talk a little bit about this, I think, later. But our grants process that we have, it makes, because we don't have those earmarked fund, it makes it easier for donors to make the most impact for those living with HIV and AIDS. And what we do on our side is we do all the homework so that the funds will go to the agencies and the people with that greatest need. We've made significant financial contributions to AIDS services organizations, and our process includes, site visits, fiscal scrutiny. We do personal interviews with potential grantees to ensure that the funds are appropriated where they can do the most good.
I'm glad you said that. Now, like when you're like doing things like doing the site visits and and doing the personal interviews, from a board perspective, because I want to apply this more broadly, not just to HIV organizations, but just boards in general. When someone's coming for a grant, what are some key things you're looking for to be like, what? This organization, I get what they're doing now that I've toured the facility. I believe this person is passionate. But what do all those things have in common that you're like, okay, I'm going to support this particular need, service, or cause, HIV AIDS service cause in North Texas?
So as it pertains to just the individuals that we work with on our board and how we can really impact our community, our community. I think first off, I have to say I'm incredibly proud and humbled by the individuals that give of their time and their talents and their money to help impact DIFFA's fundraising objectives. And I have the incredible honor of working alongside a really amazing board of folks. And I think it really starts with a gathering of individuals that at their core have mission driven hearts. I think that it's critical that we find people to help us that represent varying backgrounds and skills. And we have folks on our board that have backgrounds in marketing, social media, legal, finance, board governance, event planning, sales. So it's kind of all over the map that bring of these individuals that I have the opportunity to work with that bring that skill set and contribute in different ways, right? But we all kind of jump in, roll up our sleeves, and identify the best and most effective way to work with our aid services organizations to grant the funds that they need it mostly for. And I think just for us, we just bring a unique skill set of managing and running the association to help, really with achieving our fundraising objectives is what it boils down to.
Well, I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think a lot of people with boards, they get so tied up in the financial, and DIFFA more than just about any other board I've ever seen really understands that yes, financial capital is important, but it's only one of the pillars. It's not the only pillar. And that's where having people that have social capital or have
Mm-hmm.
relationship capital or have access to really good human capital, that really that ensemble of all three of those pillars does that. And like when you're talking about people with a marketing background, they may not necessarily be able to cut $100,000 check, but they may be able to bring in resources and awareness for, let's say, Burgers and Burgundy or
Yep,
House of DIFFA that really helps elevate the event and gives it that wider community impact that's needed and necessary.
that's right.
Absolutely. And I just think that's so critical. And that's what I've always loved and appreciated about about the DIFFA board. And, I want to kind of turn a little bit, I know we're here to kind of talk with talk about House of DIFFA, but, Dallas is unique in that it does kick off events probably better than any other city I've experienced anywhere in the United States. You all really do a good job with it. And House of Diff, I mean, and Burgers and Burgundy
Mm-hmm.
is among the very top of that. And, we were talking in the green room. It just blows me away how many people attend a pre-party.
Yeah.
So talk about how a kickoff event creates buzz for that, for the House of Diffa event that you're going to have in the spring.
Yeah, no, well, actually, we just are on the heels of that event. We just had it last Thursday. It was an incredibly well attended event. I think we had over 700 people. When you talk about our opportunity and how we're able to pull off these events, I mean, we couldn't do any of it without the support of a number of different companies and vendors that give of their services and their time. I mean, when you think about, we had our event this year and this is our third year at the Village Dallas. They really they donate all of that for us, right? So we're able to not we don't have to cut into our funds because we effectively don't have to pay for the location, which is incredible. To your point, Burgers and Burgundy is kind of a pillar event of ours. It's the kickoff to our season because our fiscal year really runs from July to June. And it's the first event of three major events that we have in the year out of the year. And it was actually started by a former Style Council member, John Tazar, who is a local celebrity chef. And when he was on the Style Council during his year, he had a bunch of friends over to his house and served up some burgers with some wine, and that became what now today has become known as Burgers and Burgundy, where again we had 700 people in attendance at the one we just recently have. So that's how we kick off our fundraising year. We announce our style council members at the Burgers and Burgundy. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Some of our style council members are, artists and leaders in our community, and they really just kind of help us raise awareness and funds for DIFFA leading up to House of DIFFA in the spring. And then we also announce our House of DIFFA theme at Burgers and Burgundy. Now it's interesting because, and we'll talk a little bit about the theme here in just a minute, but it's, the Burgers and Burgundy has really kind of become to be known as a marquee culinary event in Dallas, right? I mean, with 700 people, we had 16 chefs this year that came in and created their own version of a slider and paired it with some amazing wine. So it's really kind of just become this amazing event that kicks off our season. We raise funds, we do, raffles, we sell tickets, and that's how we kick things off for the year. So it was a great event, and I'm just so proud of what we achieved with Burgers this year.
That's amazing. And what I love about kind of everything you said, kind of the through line was all that growth over the years with it, starting basically as a elevated backyard culinary event. We won't even say the BBQ word, but for it to evolve into this thing where it's kind of this culinary destination, with dozens of chefs, what advice, if someone's planning their very first pre-event for a fundraising gala, what piece of advice would you give them to say, focus on this, and then you'll position yourself well for growth in future years?
I think as a charitable organization, part of what we inevitably have to focus on is how do we, raise the most, but keep our costs as low as possible. And I think I mentioned it, when we were talking about burgers, and, through our board, we have, it's 20 of us, I think, that are on the board this year. And, each of us kind of, does our part to help identify partners that we can work with, that really, provide donations either monetarily or in kind that go towards helping to support our event. So for anyone that's, part of a charitable organization, it's really about what can you get donated that can become part of the event. How can you raise money? What are the unique and creative ways that you can raise money while, keeping your costs low? And then really, because we have such a good fortune of having so many creative people that are on our board that help us with marketing and social media, just really getting the word out there, and how we're presenting ourselves on social media, how we're sending out communications, doing these types of things where we're really creating awareness and trying to drive people towards the event.
Absolutely. And you had touched upon two things, and one is style council. We'll get to that in a minute. But second
Yep.
is the theme. And
Yes.
DIFFA's themes are just every year it's off the hook. And it's like it's more off the hook than the year before. I don't know how you've done it for 35, 40 years, but you do. So talk about this year's theme, the process in selecting that and how it ties to the mission.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where, we kick off with burgers, and every year our patrons look forward to revealing, whatever the House of DIFFA theme is going to be. And I think it's really, this excitement around leading up to House of DIFFA that really, help us to raise funds. And I have to make the caveat that I am surrounded by an incredible a number of very, very creative people. The theme, we work with Robin Chauvin, who does, our events and does the production for our events. And she's so critical to working with our House of DIFFA chairs. This year is David Chad and David White, who are co-chairing the event, and they all work together to come up with, to your point, just this amazing theme. This year's theme is Hotel Mystique, and I'll kind of just tell you how we describe it a little bit. We say Hotel Mystique is a place of whispered invitations, hidden corridors, velvet shadows, and unspoken desires. It's the kind of hotel that you stumble into at midnight and never want to leave, or perhaps you can't. It's an atmosphere of allure and secrecy, of elegance wrapped in mystery. It's about the power of what's hidden, what's protected, and what's waiting to be revealed. But more than that, it's a metaphor for identity, survival, and transformation. For decades, those affected by HIV and AIDS and members of the LGBTQ plus community have lived with that kind of mystique, the need to conceal parts of themselves for safety or survival. And this year's theme reclaims that secrecy as strength. What was once hidden becomes sacred, and what's once shame becomes power. So you can see how we take that theme and we try to translate it into how it's going to serve our mission at DIFFA. And again, I give kudos to all of the very incredibly, talented, creative people that we have on our board, and those that we work with to produce the show that come up with that theme. And it's one of those things that, people just look forward to coming to Burgers to see what it is. And then subsequently it goes out onto social media, and we start to create awareness around it. People look forward to it every year.
Absolutely. And then people start to think about, because it is, like I said, it is Texas's answer to the Met Gala. They have many months to plan what they're going to
Mm-hmm.
wear. And
Yeah.
it's just funny because each year it's like, okay, I have an idea of what some of the looks are going to be when I walk in the room. And then whatever I have is basically multiplied by 10, and that's actually what
Right.
what is
Right.
outputted by. I'm like, how did they get that creative? So,
Yeah. And we
but
do try
talk,
to keep it as broad as we can because, obviously we want people to be able to take it in whatever direction that we like, while giving some direction with, kind of how to think about, styling.
absolutely, and I'm going to call it here. There will be at least one heterosexual there. If for anyone who follows Modern Family, one couple will go as Clyde Bixby and Juliana, because that's just kind of how that goes. I know at least one couple's going to do that, and they'll
Love
pretend
it.
it's Valentine's Day, and Diffus got red colors as a brand. It'll all work really well. That was the first. It's so funny. I thought of a heterosexual couple. The first thing you said with that, because I just saw that episode one of those episodes a couple nights ago. So, that's incredible to do that. And what's cool about it is what we were just talking about. That shows how fun you can get with a theme, even
Hmm.
if it's even if it's a sober message. And the mission of what DIFFA does is quite sober, but you all really have so much fun getting the word out, but yet reminding people of what the cause is all about. And that's a
Right.
really
Yep.
delicate line that you all as an organization do. And you were talking about ambassadors, and we've mentioned it several times. And I'm sure some people are like, well, what does this mean? And we're talking about the Style Council. So,
Yep.
you
Hmm.
and your husband, like you said, were the first couple that were a Style Council member. And I think David, Chad, and Brad were
Yep.
the second, correct?
Mhm.
So,
Correct. Yeah.
talk a little bit about what the Style Council is, because to me, the Style Council is almost like a second board for DIFFA that year, in that,
Yes.
you've got this range of people, and, just explain what it is and how you all select the Style Council members.
Yeah. So it's I'll kind of give you a little bit of a background here. The DIFFA Dallas Board of Trustees, every year we appoint this select group of individuals that make up the DIFFA Dallas Style Council, and it's any number of, we usually try to have about 15 to 20 or so Style Council members, and they're made up of this diverse group of local leaders, that really help us, to further our mission, and really ultimately, raise more funds. The Style Council ambassadors are honored guests at DIFFA Dallas's, all of our events for the season. We talked about it earlier. We reveal them at Burgers and Burgundy, and they're really, they're members that represent influencers, community leaders, philanthropists in and around Dallas, and they're really there to help us broaden our reach, to create more awareness, to raise more money. They really play a key role in the organization's efforts to raise the critical funds that we need to support our grant philosophy of, like we talked about, closing the gap left by insufficient and declining government funding. So they really help DIFFA make a direct, contribution to serving, our mission.
Absolutely. And the cool thing is that you have, the Style Council members, they also kind of get a moment at the event each year,
Mm-hmm.
in that,
Yep, they walk the runway.
share how you incorporate them into the program, because it really, I can't think of another event in Texas that does what you all do with that as a thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so the Style Council members, there's certain, we'll call them, obligations that we ask of them. One of it is to raise, money, for DIFFA, and that can come through whatever form it comes through. It's selling tickets and selling tables and promoting our events and helping us be visible on social media and getting the word out and a number of different things. There's so many things that the Style Council members participate in throughout our year. Um, and at the end of the season, everything, as you know, culminates with House of DIFFA, and it's kind of one of the marquee fashion events of the year. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But they get to walk down the runway and they get recognized individually at the event, and so that's kind of how it culminates with that for the Style Council members, and then they kind of become part of this unique group of individuals. And actually, in some years, we bring back some Style Council members that have done it, one or more times over the years, that we call our Legends of Style. And so this year we've got 4 Legends of Style that are coming back. They've done Style Council in the past, and they come back to also help us raise additional funds and create more awareness for DIFFA. And they all get to walk down the runway at House of DIFFA.
It's so cool. And it's cool because you can see the tables that each person brought because they'll all get up and cheer and stand and clap for,
Mm-hmm.
the individual people. And it's really cool because you all do it's not like you sit all the Style Council people together. You kind of disperse them throughout the room. So it
Mm-hmm.
really kind of creates this really fun energy. And,
Yep.
one of the other things that you mentioned, is, having influencers and celebrities be a part of it. And DIFFA has always been able to draw that crowd really quite successfully. So what's the secret to getting, celebrities and community leaders to commit and saying, yes, I'm going to attend your event. And yes, I will walk the runway even if it makes me feel uncomfortable. And yes, I'll raise money
Right.
for your cause.
Yeah, I think, well, so this is our 34th House of DIFFA. And I think that we really strive to create a one of a kind opportunity to participate in what I would say is the year's most anticipated fashion and design event. And I think that the reason that we have been so successful in getting celebs and community leaders to participate is really because of that unique experience we provide, and it just makes people want to be involved.
Absolutely. And, I want to dive into what those fashion things are because there's two. And
Mm-hmm.
one starts actually before the program, and that is the jacket auction, which
Yes.
is it's one of the coolest live silent auctions I've ever been to. It's just what you have is just this cornucopia, no better word, kaleidoscope of jackets from top local, national, regional, global brands. So what's the secret to collaborating with such a range of artists to really put together this just one of a kind auction where people, want to bid on these jackets? And the coolest thing about the jacket auction is when the theme calls for it again, if they've gone, for 10 years, they'll whip out a jacket they bought 8 years ago, throw it on, and they go out the door in that
That's right.
jacket again.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. No, so I think this is one of the coolest elements of what we do each year, and it's really been going on since DIFFA's inception. Early on, for those that have been attending DIFFA events as long as I have, it used to be all jean jackets, and high end designers would create, and this is strictly clothing designers would create their take on that jean jacket, and then it would get sent down the runway and be auctioned off. So since its inception, this has kind of, as you can imagine, evolved over the years, and now it's gotten to a place where we have all different kinds of jacket styles, and we involve not just clothing designers, but local artists, stylists, designers, and they create or they craft or they do all kinds of different things to create this unique look for this whatever kind of jacket it is. And it's really, I think, a unique way of incorporating art along with our fashion show that engages the art community and then ultimately, again, helps us raise more funds as we auction those off.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned the fashion show. And when I say fashion show, I mean, there is no fashion show like it
Yes,
anywhere. Because, like, when I say it goes on for an hour, that's not hyperbole. It literally goes on for an hour with literally hundreds of looks that go, and each one's more dazzling than the next. So, talk a little bit about that fashion show and how, with all that creativity, you create something that, is cohesive, because when you have that many different looks and that many different designers, it can be really difficult to corral all that together to create something cohesive. Yet every year you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think for, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And we do, we again, we have some very talented individuals that are on our board. We have very talented individuals that help us to produce the show. And it's a massive effort to put the show on, as you can imagine. And it's really more than a fashion show even. It's performance, and we have musicians and artists that'll be on the stage doing whatever. Sometimes we've brought in local dance theaters. We've collaborated with Booker T. Washington, even the School of Performing Arts, where we have we incorporate all of these different performances, and then also, to your point, with fashion, and it is it's certainly a massive undertaking that our team goes through. I mentioned Robin, who does just an incredible job with putting it together. Her creative eye is impeccable, but she works with really our volunteer board, and in particular the co-chairs of the event, to really put together a cohesive event that will dazzle. It's a whole year of planning that goes into this thing, and culminates with House of DIFFA in May. It's on May 9th this year.
Yeah,
Or next year, I
absolutely.
should say.
And Robin's a marvel in that she makes it make sense. And that, with that
It's
much
amazing.
creativity, that's not easy to do. And I admire her so much for that.
It's unbelievable what she can create. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you've really done an amazing job kind of taking us through the experience. And I know we're coming up on time, but I want to end with one question. And that is, tell us one thing all successful nonprofits have in common.
I think I mentioned this before, and I really do feel very fortunate to be surrounded by a board with truly genuine mission driven hearts. And I'm now, in my fourth year. I'm my third year on the board. My first year was being back involved with DIFFA, was on the Style Council, and I really think that for me, uh, part of what I most look forward to every year is the opportunity to directly engage with the ASOs, or AIDS services organizations, that we work with, having the opportunity to interview them, and learn about what they need and where their challenges are and how we can help. And that, for me, is just very rewarding to get to know them in that way. And then once we go through the grant process, getting to grant them the funds that they've requested. And I think that's what it boils down to. I think all of us on this board, and really anyone that volunteers their time for DIFFA, that contributes for DIFFA in some way, whether that's monetarily or in kind. We have so many partners that we work with, so many amazing companies. I wouldn't be able to even name them all off today, but I do encourage anybody that's going to, go and check DIFFA out on our website, or in social media, and look into those companies that help us, that contribute whatever it is they can contribute. I think it's just that common collective desire to give back to the community, that ultimately, I think, drives us to push further, and to do more, and to give more. And I think that's ultimately what creates such an amazing opportunity in a charitable organization like this, like DIFFA. It is sort of that collective mission, that collective desire to help.
And that collective mission, and when everyone's on the same page, it really
Mhm.
creates something magical. And every year in May, you all are able to do that. And it's always such a joy to witness that and be a part of it, and just see so much creativity, expression, and joy in a room. And there really is no event like it, really anywhere, but especially in Texas.
Oh, we
And
appreciate that.
Rhiannon, I can't thank you enough for the time today. This has just been so much fun to
My
chat with
pleasure.
you.
My
Ab-
pleasure. Thank you
ab-
very much for having me.
Absolutely. And the 2026 House of DIFFA will be held on May 9th, 2026 at the Sheraton Dallas Hotel in Dallas, Texas. For more information, please visit diffadallas.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.